Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that every drop of water on Earth is gone. No oceans, no rivers, no lakes, no clouds, not even the water beneath your feet. And here's the terrifying part. Humans wouldn't be the first thing to disappear. Within minutes, the planet would begin changing. Within days, food production would start collapsing. And before long, Earth itself would become almost unrecognizable. But there's one problem with this scenario. If every molecule of water vanished, including the water inside your body, you wouldn't even have time to watch it happen. So let's make this thought experiment more interesting. Imagine the water inside living things stays, but every major source of water outside them suddenly disappears. The oceans vanish, rivers drain away in an instant, lakes become empty basins, clouds disappear from the sky, and accessible groundwater is gone. For a moment, you might not even understand what you're seeing. Then you'd look up. The sky would be different. The clouds would be gone. There would be no rain coming. No storms carrying water across continents. The water cycle that quietly moves moisture around the planet would simply stop. And beneath all that, something even more important would already be happening. The countdown has begun. Because water doesn't just keep you alive, it keeps almost everything around you alive too. Plants would be among the first to feel the change. Their roots would search through dry soil for water that simply wasn't there. Leaves would begin losing moisture, crops would weaken, and plants that depended on a constant supply would start shutting down. Then the chain reaction would begin. Animals need plants. Herbivores would search for food and whatever water remained. Predators would follow their prey. Birds would leave areas that could no longer support them. But humans would face an even bigger problem. Almost everything you eat depends on water. Wheat, rice, corn, vegetables, livestock. Even food that looks completely unrelated to water ultimately depends on it somewhere in the chain. So the crisis wouldn't stay a water crisis for long. It would become a food crisis. Farmers couldn't plant new crops. Irrigation would be impossible. Rainfall wouldn't return. And the food already sitting in supermarkets would only buy humanity time. Because once those supplies were gone, there would be almost nothing replacing them. And that's when civilization would face a problem far bigger than thirst. It would have to survive without a functioning food system. At first, cities might still look strangely normal. Buildings would still stand. Roads would still exist. Supermarkets might still have food on their shelves. But behind that illusion, the system supporting billions of people would already be breaking apart. Farms would fail. Livestock would become impossible to maintain. Transportation and industry would struggle. And governments would face the impossible task of distributing a rapidly shrinking supply of food. A civilization doesn't need to lose everything to begin collapsing. It only needs its essential systems to stop working. And while humans were fighting to preserve those systems, the planet itself would be undergoing an even bigger transformation. The oceans had covered most of Earth's surface with water. Now imagine all of that water simply gone. The seafloor would be exposed. Coastlines would disappear in the form we recognize. Enormous salt deposits would remain where oceans once stood. And landscapes, hidden beneath kilometers of water for millions of years, would suddenly sit beneath an empty sky. Earth wouldn't simply be a drier version of itself. Its entire surface would be changing. But there's an even bigger problem. Water doesn't just shape the land, it helps regulate Earth's climate. Oceans absorb enormous amounts of heat from the sun and move that energy around the planet through currents. Water evaporates, forms clouds, and drives rainfall. Remove that system, and Earth's climate would be fundamentally transformed. There would be no ocean evaporation, no clouds forming from that moisture, no rainfall returning to the land, and no rivers carrying water across continents. The familiar water cycle would be gone. The atmosphere would become dramatically drier, while the enormous heat-storing capacity of the oceans would disappear. That could make temperature differences far more extreme in many regions, especially between day and night. The stable conditions that complex ecosystems had evolved around would be gone, and from space, the change would be impossible to miss. The blue oceans would be gone. The white clouds would disappear. Earth would no longer look like the blue planet we know. It would look dry, harsh, and almost unrecognizable. But here's where the story gets strange. Earth wouldn't immediately become completely lifeless. Some organisms are far tougher than humans. Certain microbes living deep underground or inside isolated rock environments might survive using tiny amounts of trapped moisture. Other organisms can enter dormant states, slowing their biological activity almost to nothing and waiting for better conditions. They wouldn't be thriving. They'd simply be surviving. And that's an important distinction, because while a few microscopic organisms might persist, the complex ecosystems we know would collapse. No forests spreading across continents, no rivers supporting wildlife, no crops growing in fields, no massive food webs connecting plants, insects, animals, and predators. And without those systems, humans would have almost no chance of continuing for long. That's when the real lesson of this thought experiment becomes clear. We usually think of water as something Earth simply has, something sitting in oceans, something coming from our taps, something we drink when we're thirsty. But water is doing far more than that. It helps regulate temperature, it drives weather, it allows plants to grow, it supports food chains, and inside your own body, water is essential for your cells, blood, brain, and organs to function. So water isn't just one ingredient in Earth's environment. It's part of the machinery that makes the entire system work. And that's why removing it wouldn't simply create a thirsty planet. It would create a completely different planet. So the next time you pour yourself a glass of water, pause for a second. It looks ordinary, cheap, almost unlimited. But behind that simple glass is something far more important than it appears. Because without water, your food disappears. Your ecosystems disappear. Your cities eventually struggle. And the civilization built around them begins to disappear too. Water isn't simply something Earth has. It's one of the fundamental reasons Earth can support complex life at all. Take it away, and you don't just get a dry Earth. You get a world that is no longer truly our Earth. If you enjoyed this thought experiment, subscribe for more questions that reveal just how strange and fragile our world really is.